are ready to do a demo here tonight, and I'm going to talk a little bit about all the food that you ate, but I'm only going to demonstrate actually how to make one of the recipes. So I'm going to start with the zucchini patty, and then while that is kind of sitting and soaking up the liquid, we'll talk about some of the other recipes. So this particular recipe is one I cannot take the credit for having come up with it. A friend of mine came up with this recipe because her garden would produce so much squash, she didn't know what to do with it all. And that's something like everybody does with. So she has shared this recipe with so many people to help them to use up a lot of squash. Especially when you get these big ones, you go, away for the weekend, you come back, and that little squash is now like a baseball bat. Yeah. And you're like, what am I going to do with this thing? And this particular recipe is great for either zucchini squash or yellow summer squash. You can use either in it. When you get to this size, you pretty much can just use the whole thing. Sometimes when a squash gets really big, the seeds in it get really large. And so you might end up scraping some of those out. But what I love about this recipe is that you can use up a lot of squash, and then this recipe is great for freezing for the winter. So you can make this into patties or into meatballs and put those in freezer bags, and just take this recipe and double it or triple it, or just grate up all your squash and figure out how much squash you have of shredded squash, and then double the recipe as you need to. And as I was notified, it actually makes a lot more than it says there. Cheryl's like, it says 7 patties. It made 31. So
that was double.
That was a double recipe. Okay, so that's probably about right. Your patties were a larger size patty. I think if you're doing that, well, it says 7. It was really more like 14.
It says the third of a cup, and I pretty much measured those out in a measuring cup and then put them in my hand and just handing them out. So
yeah,
I don't know where they came up with 7. Really,
so we will change the quantity. It makes a lot more than it says. But if you double it, you're like, oh, I've got so many patties left over. Don't worry, just freeze them and you'll enjoy them later. So the first thing we're going to do is just shred up some of our zucchini, and you can use a hand grater, or you can use I'm going to be actually using a salad shooter, and I know that I didn't realize there wasn't a outlet over here on this table, so I'm just gonna have to spin around a little bit and grate these up. Oh yeah, that would work. We have one. Alright, so this is my little salad shooter. I love this thing.
It's marvelous.
Cheryl borrowed it. She's like, I'm gonna go buy one. Measuring cup here, so let's do this so we can kind of get how much we need.
Esther, that's a good job for you.
I was gonna come up and help.
He was gonna come help me. I was curious how much it was gonna make, and it made just about the right amount.
Have you ever
So
heard of Filipino Indians?
No.
For years, they used to, they had canals into the desert.
okay,
So,
so we have now our 4.5 cups of squash, and then what we're gonna do is get our onion. Now you can mince your onion, but I'm gonna do it a little bit of a faster way. But before I do my onion, I'm going to chop up the cashews, just so that my food processor is dry. Now you don't have to use nuts if you have a nut allergy. You can substitute raw sunflower seeds as well. This one I'm using raw cashews, and these are not to be confused with the roasted kind that you would find often in your produce department. I buy these at Costco. I think you buy them at, what did you say, Meijer too?
Myers had them.
Okay.
They're cheaper at Costco.
Yeah, and you want to chop it up until it's small bits, not like butter. You don't want it to be like sawdust, but you don't want huge chunks. That's it. Fast and easy. All right, dumping all of that in here. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put in our onion, the same food processor. And if you are making like a really big batch of this, like quadrupling this recipe, and you have a larger food processor, you can just do everything in the food processor and it works really easy. Actually, before I add this onion, because that's going to make it wet, I'm going to go ahead and do my breadcrumbs. So I'm just using, these are soft breadcrumbs. We're just putting in bread. Now, if you want a gluten-free version of this recipe, just use more oats. Okay, we'll stuff all that in here. And that's how you make soft breadcrumbs. And it calls for a cup. And I've got a little bit more than a cup there. I'm just gonna put the rest of it. You know how, is that how you cook? You just like, oh, fudge a little here, fudge a little there.
Everybody's shaking their head.
And that's the thing about this particular recipe is it is so forgiving. You can add a little bit more of this or that and you'll be just fine. And just to save time, I'm gonna throw my herbs in here too, rather than chopping these up. So in this one, I am going to put in some fresh parsley and some basil. Yep, you got lots of basil at home. This is a good recipe. If you just use the parsley and basil, you're gonna have almost a little bit more of like an Italian flavor, which would be really good with spaghetti, like a spaghetti meatball. You can use thyme, oregano. Got some dill here. I think we'll throw a little of that in there as well. All right, so we're just gonna chop all that up with all these onions. Lid back on. I have a love-hate relationship with this food processor. I think I've overstuffed it a little bit. And like I said, there we go. That's what I wanted to see. Okay. So now we're just gonna put all of our onions and chopped up herbs. And the herbs are really what gives this the most flavor. And that's why this is a great summer recipe. Because if you got herbs growing in your garden, this is a great way to preserve some of that summer flavor for the whole year. And have these patties pulled out come January and have some summer goodness for dinner. Okay, so the next items that we're using is just going to be the flavoring. And we're really only flavoring it with three things. Our herbs, and then some salt, and I'm putting in 2 teaspoons of salt. I am using here a Redmond's Real Salt. This is produced by a company out in Utah from the salt flats out there. It's very pure and very good, but Celtic sea salt or pink Himalayan salt would be good salts as well. And then I'm putting in next nutritional yeast flakes. This may be something you're not as familiar with. It is not a baking yeast. It's a deactivated type of yeast, but it's very high in B vitamins, especially vitamin B12, which vegetarians could be a little bit low on because most B vitamins come from your dairy products and your meat products and such.
Right.
So this is a great source of getting all your B vitamins and B12. And it gives it a kind of a cheesy flavor. It's kind of like a Parmesan type of substitute. So it's very good. I use it in all my cheese sauces and lots of different recipes. Okay, we haven't put the oats in here yet.
Where do you get the yeast at?
Oh, good question. Thank you for asking. I buy it in the baking aisle at Meijer or Kroger. At Kroger, it's comes in a bag, and it's a Simple Truth brand, the Kroger brand. This particular one, I think I bought at Meijer, or you can buy it at a health food store. Walmart, yeah, we'll carry it.
And what are you putting in right now?
This is Quick Oats. So we have three
okay.
cups of Quick Oats.
And when it says you should use your hands, when you do a double batch, use your hands.
Just get them in there and start mixing it up. That's right. And if you quadruple this recipe, you need a big bowl. And you will make a lot. Now, when you first start mixing it up, you're like, wow, this is really dry. This is never going to form into a patty. But no worries, because we have a piece of skin there we're going to take out. No worries, because as the salt interacts with those shredded zucchinis, it's going to release the moisture. If you've ever made zucchini fries or something like that, they always say, put salt on it, leave it for 20 minutes, and then blot it, because it will start to perspire. So that's exactly what starts happening here, is that as this sits, once you mix it up, just let it sit maybe 5-10 minutes or so, and it will soften right up. And then it will pack more into a patty shape. Okay, so we're just going to let that sit for a moment and absorb all of that liquid that's going to release. And while that's happening, I'm going to just talk about a couple of the other recipes that you have and give you a couple little tips. And those of you who are on our health team who made those recipes, if you have a point you want to make, just pop in and say something. So let's talk about the kale chips. I heard a lot of people saying these were really good.
They were.
I can eat so many of these, but I would not sit down and eat a big bowl of just kale. I put kale in my smoothies, and I'll sometimes make a kale salad, but I can get oversaturated with just raw kale. But dehydrated as kale chips, these sour cream onion ones are just so good. So a couple tips for these is to use fresh onions. I actually used an onion from the farmer's market for the regular onion, and then a big handful of green onions. So that's what's giving it that onion flavor. The sour cream part, or the cream part, is a cashew base. Now, if you have a nut allergy, you could try swapping that out with sunflower seeds. I haven't tried that. You might have to add a little bit of oil to it, just because sunflowers are not as fatty as, let's say, a cashew. I have also made this with almonds, but I blanched the almonds first, which means I put them in boiling water and then let them drain them, and then the peels just pop right off of the almonds. And it worked just as great. So whatever you might have, you can substitute those nuts. Your lemon juice is what's giving it the tang, and then I have sometimes added nutritional yeast flakes to this, but the recipe did not call for that. Now I put these in a dehydrator, and that's what really gives them a really crispiness without them getting overcooked. In an oven, you can make kale chips in the oven. You just have to watch them carefully so that they don't burn, because there's a fine line between when they're drying out and they go over the edge. But if you have a dehydrator, you can do a whole bunch. This particular recipe was 2 large bunches of kale, and it completely filled my dehydrator. And I have a large one that has 9 trays. So you can cut the recipe down or freeze part of the dressing until you want to get around to making another batch. So that worked out really good for me once this summer as well. Any questions on the kale chips? Okay, let's move now to the summer corn edamame tomato salad. What do you think of this one?
Good.
I love this salad, and this is definitely like the fullness of summer. And this is a particular recipe that has a lot of variety as well. It's very low fat. I think there was just a little bit of olive oil in here, but not much, not like a normal salad. It's very kind of heavy with dressing. And then it has some lemon juice in it to give it a little tang. You can add herbs to this as well. Like someone said, they have a lot of basil in their garden. This is a great recipe to put fresh basil in, and it just gives it a little bit of extra pop. The edamame is, for those of you who asked, just a soybean from the pod, not processed or anything, and it's very high in protein. So basically, this salad, you could eat just this for lunch and you'd have a complete meal. Your protein, your carbs, your veggies, everything in one thing. You just take this just for lunch and just eat that salad. And it's a perfect way to enjoy the best taste of summer.
Where do you get the soybeans?
The soybeans usually are just in your produce department of the freezer section. Yeah, where your corn and peas and all those other ones are. They come frozen.
Frozen section of Meyer.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can buy them shelled or in the pod. I would get them out of the pod. Then you don't have to break them apart. And
You have better value if you buy them already out of the
there's
pod,
more in the
out of
package.
shelf. You
Yeah.
get more for your money.
And you save time. If you go to an Asian restaurant, they will often serve edamame as on the appetizer menu, and it comes in the pod with a little bit of salt on it. And people pop them out and eat them. It's fun, but you don't need that for this recipe.
Do you have to boil them or anything, or just
I think you
defrost
steam them, right?
Yep, I steamed them with the corn.
Okay, and then the next one was the patties. So, just for the sake of the camera here, I'll show those. So these were the zucchini patties, and then we serve them with a dip. There's many different ways you can serve these patties. This particular time we did a dill dip just because I thought, oh, summer flavors, you know, with those herbs. And we actually, for these recipes, made our own mayo. And it was made with a soft tofu. I'm not sure which one you did, Marcy, for yours. I used a package of the Morinu silken tofu that is available at the Asian section at Meijer. This is not a refrigerated tofu, it's just on the shelf. It's shelf stable, so you can buy it, keep it in your cupboard, and then when you need it, grab it. So that's what I use, but there is also silken tofu that you can buy in the produce department. And is that what you use? Okay.
With the other tofus and it's vegetarian.
Yeah.
Meat.
So where the other tofu is, that's a refrigerated form of a silken tofu. And then it has lemon juice and then a very neutral oil. I think the recipe only called for 1/3 cup, which when you think about a normal mayo, it's almost 100% oil. And then it's just whipped so that it looks like mayo, and it has a few other things in it, but it's mostly oil. This recipe in comparison is far less fattening, and it's also high protein because of the tofu that is in it. And then we added the dill and a little lemon and garlic powder and such to make the dressing. Okay, and then the last recipe that you had, which was your dessert, which was the summer fruit crumble. This, oh, I just love, this was really good. It was so good. And maybe it's because those blueberries were just like freshly picked and they just, oh, so delicious. Now, when it comes to making desserts for your family, everybody still wants to have sweets, and we don't want to deprive ourselves of having sweets. But the key is to avoid eating a lot of refined sugars, okay? So this recipe did not have refined sugars in it. Instead, it used coconut sugar. Now, coconut sugar is just made from the flowers of the coconut palm tree and the sap that's collected from those. It is very high in vitamins. It's lower glycemic. It's not completely glycemic free, but it's much lower glycemic than like a table sugar. And it's kind of brown, so it looks a lot like brown sugar. Yeah, and you can substitute it 1 for 1 in any recipe that calls for brown sugar. So that was used to sweeten the berries a little bit, which didn't really need a whole lot because they're already sweet, and then to make the crumble topping on top. And then we had this with some non-dairy ice cream, and there's so many different options now. But you know what? I could just eat this for breakfast without the ice cream, and I'd be so very happy.
What were the crumbles made out of? They were better than any oatmeal crumble that I've ever
Yeah.
topped something with.
I did all oat flour and oatmeal. I didn't use any of the
Almond flour.
almond flour because I don't use any nut stuff because of Billy. But yes, I used almond flour and oat flour and oatmeal.
Yes.
So
There you go. So you can leave out the nuts altogether, and it was still fabulous. And because of it was using the oats, this could be a gluten-free recipe as well. Now, the recipe tells you that you can do a zucchini apple variation. And the last time I used this recipe at a cooking class, we actually did that, and I think we fooled everybody because it was half blueberries and half apples, but they weren't really apples. So let me just tell you what you would do. You use these same large squashes that are oversized. The key is to then peel it so that there's none of this green. This is what would give it away, okay? So you peel it, and then if it's a very large squash that has large seeds in it, just take a spoon and scoop out the middle. Cut it into quarters, and then scoop out those thick seeds. And then you slice it. And you want to slice it very thin, basically as thin as you can get it, which would be like 1/8 of an inch. And then you steam it with some lemon juice. And the lemon juice actually is what gives it the apple taste, because apples are a little bit acidic, and so it gives the squash an apple flavor. Now the key with using the squash is to steam it until it's soft and about the texture and softness of an apple would be after it was cooked, you know, like an apple pie. You know, think about that kind of texture, because it doesn't really cook up a lot more or soften up a lot more in the crumble when you bake it. So you mix that then with your blueberries and everything else and put your topping on it and serve it to your family, and they'll think you're giving them apple blueberry or just apple crumble, and you were just using up more squash. You give it all that squash. One caveat I will say though is that it doesn't freeze the best. I made some for a big event, and I had like 2 left over, and I put them in the freezer. It wasn't terrible, but they softened and lost a lot of liquid as they baked, or as they sat in the freezer, and the crumble got a little soft. But okay. This is now perfect. It is soft. Everything has absorbed while we were doing all that talking. You could pop this in the fridge overnight and make the meatballs the next day, you know, if you're running short on time. Now, there's a couple ways you can do this. I think Cheryl said that she just formed them in her hand like a normal patty and baked them that way. I will often use a canning jar lid. This would make a small one, or a wide mouth for more of like a hamburger size. And then just You can either put a little spray on it or water, either will work. And then just pack your filling in it, like that. And then you find a plate.
Oh, I put them all away.
That's all right. We will use this. And then just take it, flip it over,
Oh, that's a good idea. 'cause
and this
then
just
it's
pops
so
right out,
perfect.
and you have a
Mm,
perfect shaped patty.
Yeah, looks nice for company.
It looks very nice, and it's so easy. And then you can either bake these, or you can put them on a skillet with maybe just a little bit of oil, or no oil at all if it's a non-stick, and brown them. And then after that, you can eat them right then or freeze them for later. So, wonderful recipe. Go home, make a bunch of them this summer. Enjoy them throughout the winter. Put a mushroom sauce on it one time, or make meatballs out of it, because they form meatballs really easily as well. Make a meatballs, bake those in the oven, and then serve them with spaghetti and spaghetti sauce, or make a barbecue sauce over them. So many different ways you
Or a
can do.
homemade ranch with Frank's hot sauce for a buffalo wing.
He did that last week. Okay, so there's, as he said, there's many different ways that it can be done. So thank you guys so much for all that.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was wonderful.